All right, let's dive right into today's explainer. We're looking at a genuinely chilling piece of maritime folklore, the Rathlin Island Banshee. Now, as a modern researcher, I usually hunt for practical, real-world explanations for these coastal myths. But to truly grasp the massive psychological impact of this specific legend, we've got to totally shift our perspective. We're not looking at the lighthouse as this bright symbol of hope. Instead, we're going to step directly into the myth itself. Let's view this beacon through the ancient, angry eyes of the sea.
Seriously, just let that question sit with you for a second. What actually happens when a beacon of salvation becomes a dinner bell for the abyss? We are totally conditioned, right from childhood, to see lighthouses as the ultimate symbols of safety, these brave stone pillars pushing back the dark. But this folklore forces us to question that safety. It asks, if the absolute dark is literally teeming with predators, does shining a massive spotlight out into the black really keep you safe? Or does it just broadcast to the deep exactly where you're hiding? To wrap our heads around this threat, we basically have to scrap everything we think we know about this mythological creature. Inland, the traditional banshee, the Bean-Shide, is all about lineage and soil. Her grief is incredibly intimate. It's tied deeply to the hearth and to very specific bloodlines. But out at sea, spirits don't care about your family tree. The maritime spirit is this primal, predatory collector of the ocean's memory, draped in gray seafoam. It completely replaces that intimate, personal grief with a cold, rhythmic, almost mechanical hunger. And that brings us to a concept unique to ocean folklore that is just terrifying. The sluagh. A spirit seen out on the waves doesn't just predict an inevitable end, she actively commands the sluagh. That is the restless host of the unforgiven dead. While the inland spirit mourns a single, specific life, the maritime spirit celebrates the conscious hunger of the tides. To her, humanity isn't something to mourn. We're just inventory for the deep. This lore actually maps out the psychological torment in 4 distinct acts. First up, the invitation. So, let's step fully into the mind of this entity for a moment. Imagine saying, "For centuries I watched the rock in silence, just a jagged tooth waiting to bite." And then, the men arrived. They built a needle of stone and crowned it with fire. They actually thought they were stealing the night from me, using their artificial sun to push back my borders. I stood there on the churning froth, watching the keeper polish his glass. His heart was just heavy with this distinctly human arrogance of protection. As the self-proclaimed guardian of the living, he missed the most profound truth. In the absolute dark, a light doesn't just warn, it screams. I took a deep breath of salt and mist, getting ready to answer that scream with a song the living were never, ever meant to hear. This arrogance inevitably triggers the second act, the conduction. I stepped onto the keeper's high gallery. Picture this, my skin the exact color of a drowned moon, and my hair trailing like wet kelp. I didn't cry for a grandfather or a son. Instead, I opened my throat and let out the rhythmic, pounding pulse of the Atlantic's many victims. It was an agonizingly methodical supernatural assault. My song carried the collective weight of 1,000 drowned souls. With every single rotation of his massive lens, the beam swept over the dark water, catching the silver eyes of the restless waiting right beneath the waves. And boom, a connection was made. The drowned finally began to rise. I watched the keeper's face turn to absolute ash, because he realized in a single moment of pure horror that his instrument of salvation was actually a magnet for the dead. His salvation was a dinner bell. The drowned began rising from the depths, limbs heavy with salt, and they were climbing his spiral stairs not because they wanted warmth, but because his own beacon had finally given them a target. The tension completely explodes in the third phase, the siege. I became this chilling conductor for a choir of shadows. I was the bridge between the keeper's rigidly ordered world of duty and the chaotic, crushing hunger of the deep, all while he desperately barred his heavy wooden doors against us. For 7 agonizing days, I sat upon the railing and conducted my shadows. That tower was no longer a sanctuary, it was literally an island of bone. By day 7, the very specific drowned spirits of the 1898 shipwrecks had fully surrounded him. They were pressing their cold, wet palms against the thick glass, their silent mouths perfectly mimicking my song. It wasn't until the dawn of the 8th day that this terrible siege would finally break. During those 7 days, I pressed my face right up to the glass, whispering a grim truth to him. Wood and iron are absolutely no defense against a memory. You see, the sea is a jealous god, and it never lets a gift go unreturned. We didn't actually want his life, we wanted his witness. We forced him to look out and see that every single flicker of his lamp was merely an anchor dragging the abyss upward. This culminates in the final act, the reclaiming. As dawn finally breaks, the ultimate subversion of the Keeper's ordered world is perfectly realized.
On the 8th day, the man was just gone. I didn't take his life. Instead, his delusion of absolute control was entirely dismantled. He fled the shore, boots clicking frantically away. He finally understood the grim geometry of the coast. I watched his light die out in the rising sun, and I slipped right back into the gray foam. The sea had reclaimed its dominance. Sure, the lighthouse still stands on that desolate rock today, but it knows its true master now. It is not a savior. It's a monument to what remains below. I want to end with this incredibly devastating final thought delivered straight from the heart of the abyss. For every ship saved, 1,000 more remain in the dark, and they are very, very patient. So the next time you look out at a beacon shining bravely over the black ocean, ask yourself, is it really pushing the dark away, or is it just calling out to whatever is waiting in the deep?